Hello everyone and welcome back to Tutorialronpa. This is MP, and in this episode, even though I said I was going to do the trial camera, I will be leaving that for a later episode and we will actually be going over the Nonstop Debate here. So we're starting with the trial minigames. For the Nonstop Debate in particular, and it might be the same thing for another few minigames, what I will be doing is I'll be making an easy version, which is the topic of today's episode, and I will also be doing a hard version with a few more characteristics that are a bit harder to pull off in another episode. But this is just the basics you need to get a Nonstop Debate working. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to tell you what resources you need, what assets you need to make your Nonstop Debate. So other than, of course, having your game ready for it, you're going to need an image for every line your Nonstop Debate has. You're going to need an image for every bullet your Nonstop Debate is going to have. Then you're going to need your character sprites. During Nonstop Debates, there are 3 characters on screen at the same time. Then you will need your trials, standees, podiums, whatever you want to call them. You need an image for that as well. Then you're going to need your background, obviously. And lastly, you're going to need your counter images. What do I mean by this? In my case, I have a no that's wrong image. Then I have a break image, which is the text that says break. And I have a glass breaking overlay image. So that's 3 images total. Depending on what animation you want to do for your counter, you're going to need a different combination of images, but this is the one I'm going to teach you. Now, for minigame tutorials, these are going to work a bit differently than all tutorials thus far. Different minigames will have different events. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what events you're going to need for a Nonstop Debate, and I'm going to divide the tutorial event by event. So to make the easy Nonstop Debate, we're going to need a total of 3 events. These are bullet management, where we will manage the changing of the truth bullets. Dialogue management, where all the progress of the Nonstop Debate will be programmed. And then we have shooting management, where the game will check whether the statement is correct, whether the truth bullet is correct, and trigger the counter based on that. We will be programming them in that exact order. So I'm going to start with bullet management, then we're going to move on to dialogue management, and lastly, shooting management. So let's get to that, shall we? Okay, so the first thing we're going to be programming is the bullet management event. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the event. I'll be setting the event to parallel. And now we'll be adding our condition. To do this, we're actually going to create a new variable. This variable is going to be called NSD faces, Nonstop Debate faces, and we're going to use it everywhere for this mini game. So keep that in mind, it's a very important variable. For this page, we're going to set NSD faces to 1. And then what I'm going to do is future proofing. I'm going to copy this event page and paste it. And I'm going to be changing Nonstop Debate faces here to 100. And I'm going to change the trigger to action button. This is so that when we're in a phase where we don't need to use our truth bullets, that we can't change them. Because otherwise we might be in a dialogue phase and the truth bullet changing will still work. And we don't want that to happen. So we're future-proofing that by doing this. Now it's time for actually programming the bullet changing. This is the easiest part of the Nonstop Debate, I'd say. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a loop. And then inside the loop, we're going to add a conditional branch for button. I personally like using shift for the bullets. So we're going to have if button shift is pressed down. And then we're going to check our bullet number. That's another variable we need to create. So we're going to go to conditional branch, variable here, and we're going to create our bullet number variable. So if bullet number equals 1, then the first thing we need to do is change our bullet number to 2. So we're going to go over here and we're setting bullet number to 2. Now that that's done, we need to show our bullet image. So I'm going to go over here, show picture. I'm going to use the number 7. I'm keeping upper left, but I'll be changing the X to 50. And I'll be choosing my bullet image. In my case, this over here is going to be bullet 2 for me, Tutorialronpa. So we're going to set that up. And now, as you can see, I set this to 50, so we're going to animate it. So I'm going to move picture 7 to 0, 0. In 10 frames, wait for completion. And then to make the movement a bit more smooth for the player, I'm going to add another 10 frame wait. So this is our bullet change. Now, the only thing we need to do is copy paste this as many times as we have bullets. In my case, for this small Nonstop Debate, I've only added 2 bullets. So I'm going to copy this. And I'll be changing, firstly, over here, the bullet check, if bullet number is 2. Here we would cycle through the bullets. So if you have 3 bullets, you would change the bullet number to 3. Since I only have 2, I'm going back to the beginning. So I'm changing this to 1. And then lastly, I'll be changing the image here to the other bullet, which in my case is called stealing code. So now we could test this, but the issue is that bullet number is not set. We're going to add this in here temporarily. We're going to do control variables, bullet number set to 1, just so we can test this, but we're going to delete it right after. So we select everything with Control A, we do Control R for testing, and there's nothing here, but if we press Shift, you can see we are changing our bullets. So with this, we are 1/3 of the way there. So next up, we'll move to the next event. The next event we will program is the dialogue management event. This is the longest one out of the 3 of them. It's going to take us a while. So make sure to pay attention because this can be a bit of a tricky one to understand, but once you actually get it, it's also really easy. So in order to do this, I will have this event over here. As you can see, I already pre-prepared it. It's set to parallel and I do have the trial 1 start switch. So now that that's done, we're going to start. In this first tab, this is where you would put your dialogue before the minigame. So usually for trials, it's going to be a lot longer. You would have, imagine if this is your first minigame, you would have your mascots explaining like the rules and how the game is going. Over here, we don't have time for any of that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add a single line of dialogue, and that's that. So I'll be setting that up, well, pretty fast because we already know how that works. It's pretty simple. So yeah, I will be speeding through it. Okay, now that the dialogue is done, we're going to start with the setup to start our Nonstop Debate. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete every single image. Next up, We will be preparing our NSD faces variable since that's what's going to be keeping track of our progress. So we're going to go to control variables, NSD faces, set to 1. Now this first page is ready, so we can go ahead and test it. As you can see, it's just basic dialogue, nothing much to say there. Oh, okay, yeah. I forgot to delete these 2 images, so let me do that. There we go. Now we're ready. Let's test that again to make sure it works. And yeah, we're good now. Okay, so with this, our first tab is done, so we're going to create a new tab. In this new tab, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the trigger to parallel. And we're going to add our condition. In this case, it's going to be NSD faces equals 1. Now let's do our setup. This is only going to be in the first tab. So over here, we're going to control variables and we're going to set our bullet number to 1. And then we're going to add our conditions. So if bullet number equals 1, then we show the picture for bullet 1. And if our bullet number is 2, then we show the picture for bullet 2. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to set up our images. So for this, I'm going to be copy pasting them because I don't want to add them manually, but you would add your background, your characters, and your podium. So that's what I'm going to be doing. To give you some reference on the image hierarchy I've set, for me, picture 1 is the background, picture 2 is the spread on the left, picture 3 is the spread in the middle, picture 4 is the spread on the right, and then picture 5 is the podium. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up the text. In order to do that, I'll be using picture 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show picture 10. We're changing origin to center. And I'll be choosing NSD11 over here. We're going to animate this text, so I'm going to place it on the left of the screen. So I'm going to set X to 0 and then Y to 360. As you can see, this places the image on the left. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the first part of the animation, which is bringing this to the center pretty fast. So we're going to move picture, 10, center. We'll be doing that for 20 frames and we will wait. And then the coordinates will be 624 and 360. As you can see, if we test this, it moves the text to the middle of the screen. Now for the second animation, we will be copying this. And I'll keep the movement really slow. We are moving to 645. And we're doing this in 300 frames, waiting for completion. So now if we test this, you see that the text continues moving, but it is pretty slow. And it's going to do that throughout 300 frames. Once that's done, we want the text to move out of the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to 1300. I'm waiting for completion and it's only going to be 20 frames. So this would be our text animation. And there you go. And now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to increase our NSD faces variable. So we're going to go over here, control variables, NSD faces, add 1. And this is it. Now for the next ones, what are we going to do? I'm going to copy paste. And I'm going to change NSD faces to 2. We're getting rid of this because it was the setup. And then the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text and the characters. So to give you a reference, this is phase 1 for me. And then once that's over, this is phase 2. So now we're going to do that for every phase. In my case, I have 6, so I'll speed through that as I do the 6 phases. Okay, with this, my faces are done, and there's always going to be a little detail on the last phase that is very important. And that is that in the last line, where we change our NSD faces variable, instead of adding 1, we will be changing it to 100. This is one of our failsafes, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to program those failsafes. There's 2 of them, so I'll be using 100 for one, and then 101 for the second one. So let's make a new page. NSD faces equals 100, set to parallel. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to erase every picture. So in my case, it's these, from 1 to 5, then 7, 10, 19, and 20. And then I'll be adding some dialogue. For 100, it's what happens when you go through all of the debate and you don't answer anything. You don't get it right, you don't get it wrong, you just don't shoot. That's what's going to happen. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy paste it, but I'm adding my dialogue. So as you can see, it's the text box, then the images. This is wrong because I copy pasted it. That's okay. I just need to change it to this. This is the trial camera movement. And this is the text. And now, once again, we are erasing everything. Only thing is here I don't have 7, so I can get rid of 7 and I can get rid of 10 as well. And lastly, we are sending it back to the start of the Nonstop Debate, which is going to be phase 1. So we're going to go over here, control variables, NSD faces set to 1. So this is failsafe 1 done. Now, for the second one, what do you think we're going to do? We're going to copy paste this, change the number to 101, and the only thing I'm going to change over here is the dialogue. Everything else can stay the same. So we're going to change the dialogue over here, and we're ready. Now there is one last thing we have to program in the dialogue management before we're done, and that's our counter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new page, and for that I'm going to set it NSD faces 102 and the trigger to parallel. So what we're going to do here is we're going to send the player here when they get it right. So we are adding the counter animation. Honestly, I don't really want to go too deep on that because everyone is going to have their own animations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the one I have step by step and explain how it works. But I do think that for this, you should try and make your own animation. There's a bunch of things you can do with this. So yeah, I'm just showing you how I did mine for this. But honestly, I do want to improve it. So take it with a grain of salt, honestly. But yeah, the first thing I have is the counter itself, which I set to image 50. The first thing I do is I place it outside of the screen at no opacity, as you can see. This 0 over here means that it's transparent. Then I move it in one frame and I give it opacity. Then I move it fast to the center. In this case, since it's in upper left, the center is 0, 0. And then I slowly, it's 1 second only, but I move it to -20. So the animation looks like this. It's not perfect, but it does the job. So yeah. The next thing I do is I add my glass breaking overlay and I add a small wait. This is a bit over half a second. So it breaks. Then I show the break picture, which is this. It's very tiny right now, so you're not going to see it. But it's the... There we go. The break from... I think I took this from DR2, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's just that. Then we are erasing absolutely everything but image 52. And then we are zooming in on image 52. So let's check the result for now. It goes, it breaks, and then that happens and it fades out. Then we erase picture 52 as well. And over here, we would do our setup for the next minigame, whatever that is. So this would consist of, first thing, we're going to add NSD faces. We're going to make it into 0 again, because we will be reusing this for all the Nonstop debates we do. We don't need to make a different variable for each Nonstop debate. So we're setting that up to 0. And then you would go into switches. And I'm going to make 2 switches for this. I'm not using them, but for progression, you would need to use these. So I'm going to make easy NSD, which is the one we just did, and then hard NSD. So we were in easy, so easy would be on. So that means we need to turn hard NSD on. And then we turn easy NSD off. And lastly, I'll be making a map so I can add it already. So I'm going to make a new map. And we will be teleporting our player to this map. So transfer player to hard Nonstop Debate, which will be the next tutorial. And with this, our dialogue management is done. The meat of the Nonstop Debate is done, so we have one last event remaining to get it fully working. So let's get to that. To finish our Nonstop Debate, we will be programming the shooting management event. This is honestly pretty easy as well, but the thing is, we needed to program both previous events to get this to work, so that's why we left it for last. So we're going to create the event. We're going to set the conditions to NSD faces 1. We're setting it to parallel, and we are also future-proofing. So we make a copy and we change NSD faces to 100, and that's future-proofed. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make a loop first. Inside that loop, we are adding a conditional branch based on our button. I personally like the OK button for shooting, which is either sed, intro, or space. And then over here, we are going to need to go into our dialog phase to check what NSD phase we're in. This branch is going to be NSD faces equals something. We don't know what yet. So we're going to go over here and we're going to check all of our text to see which one is yellow. As you can see, 3 is yellow. And 5 is yellow. In my case, 3 is not the correct one and 5 is. So keep that in mind, okay? 3, like we said, is incorrect. So I'm going to do this. NSD faces equals 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sound effect. And then we are setting NSD faces to 101, which is the mistake face. And that's done. So then we are copying this. And now we are in phase 5, which is the correct one. But it's only going to be correct if the correct bullet is equipped. So I need to check what the correct bullet is. So I'm going over here to bullets. I know that the correct bullet is this one, Tutorialronpa, so the bullet number for that is 2. So I'm going to add another conditional inside of here. This time it's going to be bullet number equals 2. And I'll be adding an else branch to that. So if the bullet number isn't 2, that means it's wrong, so we copy this. But if the bullet number is right, I'll be changing the sound effect. And we are going to go to phase 102 instead of 101. With this, our Nonstop Debate is completed, but we are going to go through and test every single possibility to make sure it works, make sure we didn't miss anything. There might have been some mistakes, I don't know. So let's try it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the character here. I'll be taking that off. I believe I didn't add it. Okay, yeah. I'll be setting the character here and I'm turning this menu off. The custom menu we did, I'm turning that off. And okay, yeah, I did get rid of the music. So let's test this out. I'm going to make a new game. And as you can see, dialog starts. The first thing I'm going to do is just let the time run out. So we're going to let it flip through everything. We are almost at the end. There's only one more left. And as you can see, that worked perfectly. We have our dialogue, and when we skip it, we're going to go back to the beginning. Now I'll be shooting the incorrect statement. So I'm going to take the correct bullet, but I'm going to be shooting this statement over here, this third one. So I'm shooting. And as you can see, it was wrong. Now I'm going to go to the correct statement, but I'll be shooting the wrong bullet. So we just have to wait. That's a big issue with testing. There's a lot of waiting. Okay, here we go. And as you can see, that was also wrong. And lastly, we're going to check our correct statement. So we're going to go to the correct statement with the correct bullet and see if that works. And as you can see, that works perfectly, and we got teleported to the next map. So with this, our Nonstop Debate is done and perfectly working. For child minigames, I understand that these might be a bit more confusing and a bit harder to follow. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I'll try to help everyone as much as I can. I'm always willing to help when it comes to this. So yeah, please don't hesitate. Just ask me and I'll try to help as much as I can. And well, for the next tutorial, like I've said, I will be doing a hard version of the Nonstop Debate. What does a hard version of the Nonstop Debate mean? It means that there's going to be a cursor you're going to control. And it means that the text is going to have a hitbox, and you're going to have to aim specifically at the yellow part of the text so that it allows you to shoot. Otherwise, like over here, we just saw the statement, we click, we shoot. Over there, you're going to have to aim, and there's going to be a hitbox. So that's what makes it way harder to code. It's not the most complicated thing in this series, I don't think, but it is a bit more annoying. So keep that in mind. So that's what we'll be going over the next episode for people who prefer that kind of gameplay. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed Tutorialronpa, make sure to check out all the future tutorials that are coming. I plan to cover as many minigames as possible. If you have any questions, any suggestions, criticism, anything, make sure to leave it in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!